What is Christmas? There is a movement going around right now that says take the Christ out of Christmas. Is this important? Does this have anything to do with us? And should it matter? Should the word Christ, the name Christ, be taken out of Christmas? Christmas is a day to a Christian holds no special meaning. We have no command in Scripture to observe the birth of Christ. There is no Scripture that tells us the date of the birth of Christ. And it's not something that, and I feel through God's silence on the matter, it is something that he feels is not as important as other aspects of Christ's life. You can, through secular history, narrow down the time of the season of Christ's birth. Turn if you would to Luke chapter 2. And it came about in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that the census be taken of all the inhabited earth. And it was the first census taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And all were proceeding to register for the census, everyone to his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the city of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house of the family of David, in order to register along with him Mary, who was engaged to him and was with child. And it came about while they were there, and the days were completed for her to give birth, and she gave birth to a firstborn son, and she wrapped him in cloth and laid him in a manger, for there was no room for them at the inn. There was the first census taken. The census took about 3 years, so that doesn't help a whole lot. But it does give us reason as to why Joseph and Mary were traveling for this census. Through study of secular history and other remarks, verse 8, and in the same region there were some shepherds staying out in the fields, keeping watch over the flock by night. What I'm fixing to read came off the internet, so take it for what it's worth. As to the time of the year the Messiah was born, Luke gives us further details. He records that shepherds were watching over their flocks by night. There are only 2 specific times in the year when this is done, namely when the lambs were being born in spring or autumn. There are other times of the year when they are kept safely in sheepfolds to protect them from wild animals. Significantly, the flocks bred in Bethlehem's fields were used for temple sacrifices. There is a reference to Revelation chapter 12 because of our study. I'm not going to read it. Why then do we celebrate the Messiah's birth on December 25th? There are 4 reasons. First, it was a Jewish feast of Hanukkah, Festival of Lights, or Feast of Dedication, as it is called in John 10:22. On this occasion, Jewish children lit candles, sang hymns, and gave gifts to celebrate a genuine miracle that occurred with the temple menorah in 165 B.C. And I have not looked that far up. The other festivals were linked to the Messiah's ministry rather than to his birth. It seemed a natural occasion to commemorate the birth of Messiah, who had come to be the light of the world, and to admonish his followers to have their lamps trimmed and burning as they waited for him to return. Reasons why Christ's birth is celebrated when it is, but more importantly, this is a man's reason for why the birth of Christ is celebrated. A man's reason. The Jewish feast occurred on 25th Kislev, which corresponds with our December up until 1583. So it goes through that Kislev and December, the same month, is to give the date. And then under the Roman Emperor Justinian, it was made an official holiday in 550 A.D., which is long after the Bible quit being written. Many people realize, though, that December 25th is not the date of the birth of Christ. But, as I was reading, it is a convenient day for many other reasons that they feel that we should celebrate the birth of Christ. What's so important about the birth of Christ? Don't say nothing. Because there is important things about the birth of Christ. We're just not commanded to observe his birth. Number one, make sure I get these in my order. Number one, Christ's birth was prophesied about to fulfill all prophecy. Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. Chapter 9, verse 6. For a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. Micah chapter 5. Verse 2. Micah 5 and 2. But as for you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you one will go forth for me to be ruler in Israel. His going forth are from long ago, from the days of eternity. In Luke chapter 24. Verse 44. And he said, these are my words which I spoke to you while I was still with you, that all things are written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and that the Psalms must be fulfilled. The birth of Christ is important to fulfill prophecy. To die, you must be born. It would be very hard for Christ to die for us as a sacrifice if he were not born. If he were not to live as a man, he could not be our example. If he were to not die, then, as we studied before, you cannot fulfill a testament of someone until they are deceased. Other than that, you can't fulfill their testament. To be the New Testament, to bring about the New Testament, to seal it in blood, you have to shed the blood. The birth of Christ is important because it gave him flesh and bones. It gave him the ability to die for our sins, with the side effect of giving us a perfect example of life and how to live it. Chapter 53 of Isaiah. Mr. Willard was helping me preach this morning and didn't know it. Who has believed our message? Who has the arm of the Lord, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a tender shoot, like a root out of parched ground. He had no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should be attracted to him. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows, appointed with grief, and like one from whom men hid their face. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely our griefs he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. Yet we ourselves esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was pierced through for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The chastening of our well-being fell upon him. And he was scourged, and by his scourging we are healed. And all of us like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, but the Lord has caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, and yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb led to the slaughter, like a sheep that is silent before his shears, so he opened not his mouth. By oppression and judgment he is taken away. And as for generation who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, for the transgression of my people, to whom the stroke was due. His grave was assigned with wicked men, yet he was a rich man in his death, because he had done no violence, nor was any deceit found in his mouth. But the Lord was pleased to crush him, putting him to grief. If he would render himself as a guilt offering, he will see his offspring. He will prolong his days, and the good pleasure of the Lord will prosper in his hand. As a result of the anguish of his soul, he will see it and be satisfied. By his knowledge, the righteous one, my servant, will justify the many, as he will bear their iniquities. Therefore, I will allot him a portion with the great, and he will divide the booty with the strong, because he poured out himself to death, and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he himself bore the sin of many, and interceded for the transgressors. The life of Christ that was lived without sin, the death that was died for our sin, are the more important things that are prophesied about, that are spoken about, that are written about in depth, to the point of the appearance of sweat and the word-for-word conversation at the time of his death with Pilate in a closed court. The death of Christ is more important to us because of the sacrifice, but more importantly the ascension, the resurrection and ascension, that he is no longer dead but living again. There are other things that people add to what Christmas Day or Christmas is supposed to be. There are three wise men. Okay. Go to Matthew chapter 2. There are not three wise men. I cannot tell you that there were three wise men. In Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, and in the days of Herod the king, behold, Magi from the east arrived from Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east, and have come to worship him. And then Herod the king heard it, and he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And gathering together all the chief priests, the scribes, and the people, he began to inquire of them where the Christ was to be born. And they said to him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah, for out of you shall come forth a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod secretly called the Magi, who ascertained from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and make careful search for the child, and when you have found him, report to me, that I too may come and worship him. And having heard the king, they went their way, and lo, the star which they had seen to the east, went on before them until it came and stood over where the child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And they came to the house and saw that, and they came into the house and saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. And opening their treasures, they presented to him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned by God in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their own country by another way. And there is no more talk about the Magi. There's three gifts that they gave: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But it might have took 75,000 Magi to deliver these three gifts. It might have took two. Doesn't say. Three gifts does not necessarily mean three men. A note from Schofield, Bible scholar. Magi is from the Greek word magoi, a Persian word for men expert in the study of the stars. There is no evidence that these Magi were only three, a number that they were kings. Their interest aroused by the star that signaled Christ's birth, they journeyed to Judea to seek the newborn king of the Jews. They arrived some months after his birth. When Herod sent them to Bethlehem, the star reappeared and led them to the Christ child. Not just three of them. But another thing that we have three of that I don't know where we get, if you turn to Luke chapter 2. In verses 8 through 20, I can get to them. So, and 8 says, and in the same region there were some shepherds staying out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. And the angel of the Lord suddenly stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone all around them, and they were terribly frightened. And it goes on to say that the angel tells them to go to the Christ child. And they do. But if you'll read 8 through 20, where these men are mentioned, and their praises, it doesn't say how many there are. Guess what else isn't in there? I can't find anything about a drum. No musical instruments. I couldn't find that either. So I'm sorry for whoever asked that question. Another common addition that is made, or a common misbelief on the part of the world, is that a special Mass is commanded on Christmas Day. Luke chapter 22, verses 19 and 20. And when they had taken some bread and gave thanks and broke it, he said to them, "Take this. This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And in the same way he took the cup after they had eaten, saying, "This cup is poured out for you. This cup which is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood." And Acts chapter 20 and verse 7, if you would. On the first day of the week, they gathered together to break bread, Paul talking to them, intending to depart the next day to prolong his message until midnight. On the first day of the week, when we were gathered together to break bread, we have a specific command, as Mr. Willard read this morning, for the Lord's Supper. We have the institution of it seen as to what it is to contain, ingredients, the way it is to be done, the prayers that are to be offered. We have a timetable of when this remembrance is supposed to take place, which is something that we lack all the way around in the birth of Christ. The death, burial, and resurrection of Christ is to be specifically remembered. What Christ has done for us, in a whole, we're to remember every Sunday. nowhere do we find any scripture telling us proper procedure or protocol for worship, for the birth of Christ. Everything else that we're commanded to observe or to take watch over or to be a part of is spelled out through protocol and procedure in the Bible. Marriage, how it's to be conducted. The way the husband is to treat the wife and vice versa. Their children to treat their parents. Everything is spelled out. Communion, as we just read this morning, is spelled out for protocol. Give the way we are to give, what we are to give back to the church, give to the saints, is spelled out in protocol. And how we conduct our worship service and the things that we're to do in our worship service we all have protocol for. Christmas does not have a protocol. It's not even mentioned. In fact, it wasn't even created until 550 AD. Well, now realizing that Christmas holds no scriptural significance to us, and also that it has nothing to do with Christ, does it matter if you take Christ out of Christmas? How do you take Christ out of Christmas? He was never a part of it. Christ had no part of Christmas. Christmas is a holiday that was created long after him, which we read at the very end of the book of Revelation, and we read in other parts of the Bible. You don't add anything to, and you don't take anything from. It's just bad. You want to know how bad? Go back and read it, but it's bad. So what should we do about Christmas? What do you do for Halloween? The government has set up a day off, and there are some that worship the dead on Halloween. Do you have to do that? No. Is it a sin for you to give out candy or to solicit candy on Halloween? No. How about Thanksgiving? The government gives us 2 days off. The only federal holiday where you get 2 days off in a row and with pay. For most of y'all anyway. What are you commanded by the Bible to do on Thanksgiving? Nothing special. What do we have the ability to do with each other that is a command though? Acts chapter 4. The first part of verse 23, and when they had been released, they went to their own companions. In chapter 5, verse 16, the first part of 16. And also the people from the cities in the vicinity of Jerusalem were coming together. Fellowship. What do you do on Thanksgiving? I don't know what you do, but I bet you it's got something to do with your family. And I bet you it's got something to do with eating, which ain't a bad idea either. Because a lot of times when these people got together, it wasn't. They had all things common. They gathered outside of the assembly to eat, or that they ate outside of the assembly. There were multiple feasts that, before the New Testament, that the Jews were commanded to observe. Eating was something that was important. Is it a sin for you to get together and eat just because the rest of the world does it on Thanksgiving? So, the federal government has given us Christmas Day off. That's awful nice of them, even though it don't mean anything special to us. Is it wrong to give gifts to each other on Christmas Day? New Testament church had all things common. Is it wrong to get together with each other on Christmas Day? We're commanded to fellowship. Is it wrong to worship Christ's birth on Christmas Day? There is no command to worship Christ's birth on any day. and I'm not adding to it. And from what I've read, if you're going to add a special day to worship the birth of Christ, you're in the wrong. Leviticus chapter 10. Now Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, took their respective fire pans and putting fire in them, placed incense on it, and offered strange fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded them. And the fire came out of the presence of the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. And Moses said to Aaron, "It was what the Lord spoke, saying, by those who come near me, I will be treated as holy, and before all people I will be honored." So Aaron therefore kept silent. Moses called to Mishael and Elzaphan, sons of Aaron's uncle Uzziel, and they carried them, and said to them, "Come forward, carry your relatives away from the front of the sanctuary, and put them outside the camp." So they came forward and carried them while still in their tunics to the outside of the camp, as Moses had said. If you're going to add some strange fire to what God has told you to do, and you are going to bind and command a day of remembrance that is not commanded in the Bible, it's the same as strange fire. Is it worth that to you to be found outside the camp? Remember we talked this morning, I don't like outside. Let's talk about that inside. If you need to come inside, and you need to become part of the fold of Christ, this time has been given set forward for you to do that. Or if it is that you've decided to leave the camp and you wish to return, it's time to set aside for that as well, as we stand and sing.